All right. So, well, it's just about 6:30. We'll call the Newcastle Planning Board meeting order September 19th, 2024. We have, let's see, second thing on the agenda is the review of the minutes, but you weren't able to.
I didn't put any on there.
It's
so-
okay, I know.
I know we're behind, so next month we're gonna have 3 or 4
That's
days.
okay. It's fine.
But I'll get caught up.
Right.
So my apologies.
All right. Item 3, agenda amendments. Do we have any amendments?
There is one thing that I wanna, well, I guess kind of two. They're related, but discussion, and we can do it in other business about fabrication district and a property. There's a the town manager, Kevin wanted to discuss possibly rezoning a parcel or amending the standards in fabrication. So, and then there is a current project that I want to discuss with you that's in the fabrication district. So it all kind of relates.
Great.
So,
We'll make that 7E. Okay, great. Is that it? No other amendments? Moving on, proposed zoning code amendment public hearing. So we have a public hearing for the proposed retail firearms sales facility use, which is part of the ongoing moratorium. And I don't know that we got to get fancy with this. It was all posted on the website. I think everyone's familiar with what we're talking about, so I'm disinclined to just read the whole thing. I'm assuming people have seen it and they've come with comments. If there are specific questions, we can refer to the text, but I think we'll just call it read instead of reading the whole thing, and go ahead and open it up for public comment at this time. So, sound good? Does anybody have a public comment about the proposed retail firearm sales facility use zoning code amendment? The mouthful. Nobody wants to say anything. Yes, please come say something.
So where do I stand? Right here?
Come right up here to the table. Just let us know who you are so the people watching at home can know who's talking. Sure.
My name is Christy Houghton. I'm a resident of Newcastle and I'm a longtime educator in the community. I am not in favor of having a firearms retail establishment on Academy Hill for lots of reasons. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments about the proposed zoning amendment? Yes, come on up.
I just have a question.
That's fine.
Okay.
Let us know who you are.
Celeste Mosier, Newcastle resident.
Great.
So where did the 300 come? I was curious because I was kind of looking up the distance that you can see like signs of stores and stuff. And usually that's like, if it's 10 to 15 inches high, it says like guns for sale. That's about 450 feet that you can see that from. Not if you have really good eyesight, right?
Mhm.
So I was wondering where the 300 came from. That's all.
That's
I'm not against it,
interesting.
I'm just.
That's an interesting
It's a great
metric.
question, yeah. Yeah.
We didn't consider that, at least I hadn't considered it. The buffer distance came from it's used in other I think like hunting restrictions. I believe you're not supposed
State
to.
law for discharge of a firearm is 300 feet
Okay.
Or from any resident,
for
Any
any residence, yeah.
or is it building? I can't remember if it's building or resident.
Resident.
It's just residents?
Residents, schools,
Okay,
stuff like that.
so yeah,
There's
So-
like an outbuilding or something like that. It
it doesn't count.
doesn't
for the
count. That's weird.
It's a resident. That's where the metric came from. It was a familiar one that we felt people were used to because of the folks in the hunting community know that rule. We did discuss additional
Yeah,
distances.
yeah, I think we looked at everything from like 100 up to like
15.
1500 maybe.
And I've seen a lot that were 500, and that seems, I guess what I'm saying is that there's more to consider than just discharging a firearm. It's suggestion and how students, like if they're having a bad, or anybody's having a particular day, seeing signs like that and stuff. So I guess that's another reason to maybe not have one on Academy Hill, but also any school within visual distance from a school window, you know?
Mhm.
But anyway,
So just to clarify, the 300 feet is from property line to property.
Mhm.
It's not from
building,
building to building.
yeah, and I saw that, but there are some schools that are very close to their property lines.
Yes.
And you can put signs for your business right next to the edge of your property line. So it's just something to think about.
Thank you very much. Any other public comments, questions? Thoughts? Yes. Come on up.
I didn't do my homework. I just read this in the Lynn County News. So Karen Mook, Newcastle resident. So where exactly is this firearm store being proposed for on Academy Hill?
So what I can say is there's not a store that's being proposed that this is kind of in reaction to. There's not an application before the planning board to review or not. This came about because the ATF contacted the code enforcement officer about issuing a license to like do you know the specifics of the license that was issued?
It's a federal firearms license.
Yeah, which could possibly include a retail store, but there's other things you can do with it as well. So I think that's what got the gears going. And it was at a property on, I'm not sure if it was issued for 38 Academy Hill, but it was basically the property that was like kind of right there. So this is not specific, the moratorium and the changes in the ordinance isn't specific for a store or for a site. What it does is it will limit the, basically pushes where you could have a retail firearm sales facility away from educational uses. And so we got into that. And so Lincoln Academy is the obvious one because here everybody knows it, but it would include any other school that were to be established, or there was a dorm associated with the school, I think we included universities. So it's more general because it's not specific on property.
So I think that was a very thoughtful comment about signage and impact on children in school, be it middle school or high school. I think that's a really thoughtful comment that I would agree with. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes.
Rob Nelson. Quick clarification, it does say K through 12.
Okay.
It does
Okay.
not include, as I read it,
Post-secondary.
college. It lists the definitions just for reference, but the language of the ordinance.
I think
It's in the ordinance though.
Right, but in the the definition.
Yeah, this is the definition for primary, secondary school and college, just in second page.
Oh, okay,
with your-
okay.
so, yeah, the restriction would apply.
College use, okay, I stand corrected. Okay, it doesn't.
Yeah, it would apply to primary, secondary school
And
use,
college
which is,
users. Okay,
yeah, which we're amending the
that
primary,
language
secondary
does
school
not
use
amend the
definition
language.
to be clear that it includes pre-K. And
Right, okay, I stand corrected.
Okay. Yes, come on up.
Leanne Coughlin, local Newcastle resident position, and just want to give my support for having the ordinance in place to keep firearm sales away from schools, but I do think the 300 feet seems a bit short from what, obviously not an expert, but just thinking about where that signage would be on the way to schools and what people are saying. I'd also agree, maybe that be reconsidered. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Yes, come on up.
Doug Strauss, Newcastle resident. Also, just a question, do you know what kind of license this would be applied, what number? 'Cause I know
We don't
there
know.
would be some-
The information was not given.
Oh, but I know there's like residential. Firearm dealers can, you know. But you're considering a retail, so
Yeah.
it's a higher number.
It'd be, yeah, retail sales is like home base, non-retail sales, we can't regulate it, because that's up to the federal government, we can't ban firearm sales, so we can only do the retail side of it.
Because I noticed also I was looking up, there are some of those in the. Out of Newcastle, but dealers. But, so, and I would also like to support having a bigger buffer around schools. Like,
Sure, yeah. Are there any other public comments about the proposed zoning amendment?
Yes.
Okay,
Jason Airboss, Newcastle resident. I'm wondering if is there a more consideration on, obviously, we're here for firearm sales, but I think this would equally, we'd be back here if it was a cannabis store or a strip club or a casino or something else. Is there consideration on expanding this part of the ordinance later to include some other facilities?
so we've already got some stuff in place for some of that. Adult entertainment uses is already covered in the ordinance. Cannabis is not something that Newcastle has ever opted into regulating, which is how it currently sits with the state statute. You have to opt in. We haven't done that yet, so cannabis sales are not prohibited in town of Newcastle yet. There's no talk about it really that I've heard. Other things like the other ones.
Alcohol.
Alcohol is already regulated in terms of how distance it can be sold from school or other institutions somewhere.
Okay, so this is kind of the one little, shall we say, loophole in the
Well, that was a
Okay.
surprise to discover that pretty much everything else, we had something on the books for. And firearm sales, retail establishments, firearm sales was something that the state left to the municipalities,
okay.
make their own decisions.
Yeah, and then as a follow-up to the buffer zone and the spacing, do you think that this ordinance leaves open maybe gamifying some of the property lines by saying, I'm gonna put it at 301 feet is where the store is or whatnot, or is it property within 300 feet of it? And then they can subdivide or something like that, or
No, it is property line. So,
property lines,
yeah.
okay, so you can't move it to the end.
So the building, the facility could not exist on a parcel.
Okay.
Whose property line is within 300 feet of a property line of the school.
Okay. Is there any consideration on what would happen later on if there was a firearm store at 400 feet and then the school ended up building a dorm that was within that 300 feet of the facility? But who's the priority there?
So I believe, and we have the town attorney here and he can speak to this if I get it wrong. But I believe in that specific instance, the pre-existing firearm sales facility would have essentially grandfather.
Yep.
They'd have a pre-existing non-conforming at that point use that they'd be allowed to continue until the use was discontinued. And then any future use would have to conform.
Okay.
Good questions. Thank you very much. All right. Any other public comments about the proposed amendment? Okay, I think okay.
Yeah.
Great. Come on down.
I'll just sit right here.
Okay, all right. You can hear well enough?
Can you hear just fine? Can you hear me?
No, it was the microphone, but Jeff has given me the thumbs up.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah. Why did this come about? Why did the amendment come about, or not an amendment? How come Newcastle decided to enact this statute or code, whatever you're calling it, in the first place? What started this?
So, the process as I understand it was, and I'm sure you are familiar with some of this, but, when the former code enforcement officer got a call from ATF about, asking like, does the town have any restrictions around issuing firearm, licenses? And so we all were surprised that no, there wasn't. No, we don't regulate that at all.
I was part of that conversation.
Yeah, and I know that you were involved in it. So then after that, conversations were had by residents. I think Ben brought it to the attention of the select board, and that there was no regulation there. So the conversation then went to, should there be regulations of any kind? And that's kind of what eventually went to the I guess I can't speak exactly to the select board, but what they said generally was, this is just something that we want to consider, and is important enough that we want a moratorium so we can consider it without, I guess, kind of before the cat gets out of the bag, so to speak. So that's essentially what we did. We just considered, so the planning board considered really just retail firearms. And I know there's I think what I said was there's other things that could be done with this kind of license, or at least this is my understanding. That's, we're not regulating that. We didn't kind of dive in to try and find out exactly what the proposed activity or use was going to be for this license. The conversation pretty quickly just went to retail firearm stores near schools.
What license? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
What license are you talking about?
Just the license that the
Site plan approval.
that the ATF contacted the town about.
Which is what?
It was just to issue a ATF license in the town.
Yeah, no, they weren't asking you for permission.
No, they were
The
asking.
conversation was, do you guys have any problem with Xander selling firearms at that location?
Oh, and
That was the question.
if that
That was
was,
the exact question from the ATF agent.
well, my understanding was,
Nope,
no, there was no.
there's no misunderstanding. That was it. You can talk to him about it again too.
And that's
And so what happens to somebody who's already going to do this and lets the town know that this is what's happening? That person ultimately gets shut down from the moratorium and then from changing the code to town code specifically for that person, or that person got through, before there was anything, because I was part of the conversation. You guys responded and said, first you said, yes, it's much too close to the school for us to be comfortable with Xander selling guns. And then a quick response back was, actually, there is no code that we have on file at all. So then there was a quick meeting with 4 people, right? And you guys decided to have the moratorium. And that's why this came about, correct? I can't hear you.
So Xander, I'll speak to what you're asking about. So your understanding of events is not the same as mine. I was asked by George Chase the question, do we have any regulations on the location of gun stores in Newcastle. I looked at the ordinance and I checked our other ordinances, and my response was, at the time, we did not.
Right,
And
That's the
did,
same
hold
that's
on,
what I just said.
hold on, well, no, that's not what you said. I was never asked,
Wait,
does anyone have a problem with Xander?
what do you mean? That wasn't what? we just
Xander, do
said
you want me
we-
to answer your question or not? Do you want me to answer?
I want an answer, yes.
I'm giving you an answer, okay? So, what I asked George was, did he think that the board would be interested in having regulations on that subject? He said, well, we should at least discuss it. And I said, okay, that's fair. So I think it was the town manager, the code enforcement officer and me discussed it. And we said, this is an issue for the select board to consider. We went to the select board. The select board said, we do want the planning board to have a chance to consider regulations around gun stores located near schools. It was not personal. So we enacted a moratorium. The voters voted overwhelmingly for the moratorium. And then the planning board has engaged in a normal ordinance review process to determine what they want for regulations.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, it's very much the same as what I just said.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else have any other public comments? I think we'd like to, we have other stuff on the agenda, so. No one else has anything? I think we'll close it.
Yeah, I do. I'm still asking questions, yes. This is for the public, right?
It is. I'd ask you in the name of brevity to, you know, if it's a new topic, that'd be great, but I think let's not keep going over old ground.
This is the time that I have to discuss this.
Sure. You have something new to comment on?
Yes, Ben, I do. You were just talking about other codes that you've changed, like adult entertainment. Where did that come from?
Those are just included in I think the original ordinance when it was adopted in 2020 or the end of 19.
Actually, it's a carryover from before.
Okay.
Yeah, it's carryover from the original 1990 ordinance.
Yes.
Because I've gone over those ordinances pretty carefully because I actually own a piece of property in the manufacturing district. And there's a long list of things that you guys have butchered. And I just wondered why that came about.
So, is the question specifically related to the retail firearm sales facility amendment proposal?
I'm wondering if it's part of the conversation you just had. I don't know the name of the gentleman that was just up there speaking. But he was talking about casinos and adult entertainment, things like that. And I think, Ben, you said that, yes, you had changed some codes so that some of those things wouldn't happen.
No, I'm sorry if you misunderstood. I was saying that some of those regulations existed prior to. Nothing in any of those is being proposed to be changed or has been changed recently.
Because I don't want adult entertainment. I have a child at that school too. The last person that I want to see anything happen around that school is me. So I view things a little bit differently, maybe than some other people, that's fine. Obviously, the planning board. Can you tell me the total group of people that is the planning board of Newcastle?
You are looking at it, actually. We have a full board here
Can you
tonight.
introduce yourselves? I know you, Ben, and I know Mike.
I'm just the town planner. I'm not actually on the board, but
So my name is Scott Schott. I live in Damerscott Mills. I've lived in Lincoln County for a long, long time.
How long?
And I'm Wanda Wilcox.
1988.
I'm Wanda Wilcox. I live in North Newcastle and I've lived there for the last 40 years and I was born and raised there. I've lived
Gotcha.
in Newcastle most of my life.
Good deal. Thank you very much. So So that's it, that's the whole board.
Now you got two more.
I'm Kevin Houghton, live on Newcastle on Academy Hill, lived there since 2005. Remember the bank.
Lucas Dawson Bader, live on Chiefgate Road, lived there my entire life.
Do you have any further questions about the proposed amendment?
Lots of them, but I can tell you in privacy or whatever word you said, we've got to continue, right?
No, if you have a question, this is the time to hear it.
Right. So. Has anybody thought about, has the planning board thought about, the question that was raised about 300 feet or 400 feet or 500 feet? And what difference that makes and why you came up with 300 feet?
Yes, that question was asked and answered before you came in.
Yeah, I guess what I could say is more, I think the conversation was around 500 or you know, larger distances, and we kind of went, I think, with what my take was kind of a conservative 300 because that was what's in the state. I think it's hunting laws, but
Discharge.
just general discharge, I guess. So that's where that came from.
Okay. And since I think I'm the start of this whole thing, I do want to say that my selling of firearms probably looks a lot different than what somebody might think. And I just want everybody to know that I'm a business owner and I've grown up in Newcastle and love Newcastle and love firearms. I don't consider them as weapons. And I was going to do this as a secondary small business out of my existing shop. I'm a builder, and if you guys have been in Newcastle this long, you know who I am. And I've been building in Newcastle for the last 24 years, and I was born at Miles. My kids were born at Miles, and I've lived in Newcastle almost my whole life too. And so I cherish Newcastle. I cherish the river. I cherish the people that live here. The wonderful school that we have. And I just want that to be known that I wasn't considering like ensnaring kids to deviate their walk up and down the hill into a gun shop to get a gun to do something wrong. Kids aren't allowed in gun shops. So my whole thought on the thing, when I got started thinking about it, when I went to get my federal firearms license, which I did get, so the government thinks I'm pretty clean too. And so whatever is enacted for a law or a code or whatever, I'll stand behind it. Even though, you know, I don't agree with it. So just want everybody here to know that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any more public comments at this time?
Do you ever compare the?
Could you just tell us who you are, please?
Yep, I'm Susan DeCompany. I'm a resident of Newcastle. Did anyone look at drug-free zones and how big they are around schools? And is there any relationship between, coming up with that distance?
Thank you. No, we didn't. Very intentionally, we kept our focus narrowed in on the question at hand, and we were adamant in not being tempted to expand that beyond our charge.
What I will say is we did look at the existing regulations in the code around adult entertainment specifically, and that like I said was like 1,500 feet, which I think the conversation was like that was probably a little bit much for this. So but we didn't look specifically at drug-free school zones.
Thank you for the question. Yes.
Bill moved Newcastle. Does anybody know what the drug-free zone is?
What the distance is?
Off the top of my head, I do not, I'm sorry. All right,
1,000.
1,000,
Yeah, the first hit was 1,000.
there you go.
And that is what it is in Damascata. I think that's what it is for their marijuana stores, but different municipality.
All right. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. The time is 7:59. 6:59, thank you. Didn't go that long. So, anyone that came here for the public hearing, you're welcome to stay. Thank you very much. If you don't want to, now is the time to leave before we move on to new business. Thank you.
You guys got anything?
I don't think
Maybe.
so. Whoa, okay.
Well, just whether we're talking about complete application.
Oh.
Stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Can you stay for a little bit? Okay. You have something else? I don't want to keep you. If you gotta go, go. If you gotta go, go.
No, I'm good.
Okay, great. Okay, so moving on, old business, none, new business. Map 12, lot 11. Large project plan and subdivision application, Z38 LLC, 38 Academy Hill Road.
So, yeah, applicant is here. If Xander, if you want to come up and we're going to discuss your 38 Academy Hill project. And what will just as a little bit of an introduction, you know, I haven't brought this to the board till the last meeting, and it's normally I wouldn't, but there's been some conversation about is it complete, should it go to the board? And I think if it wasn't, not at our last meeting, but the meeting before, we discussed complete application, all of that, just generally, and then also specifically with Sanders. And there's still some items that I think are missing that as we're sorting out our process around complete application, not complete, you know, when things come to the planning board. That's kind of why I think that's the first item that we probably want to discuss.
Well, the first thing we're going to discuss is if there are any disclosures of conflict of interest for board members regarding the application. All right, seeing none, we'll move on
Well, yeah,
to application completeness.
what about the project at the bottom of Academy Hill? That's a little bit in conflict.
Which project is that?
The low income housing.
Oh, no, the conflict of interest is if there's any board members who have a personal conflict of interest with the application that's being presented.
Okay.
And
Sometimes you might have a personal interest in it or something.
or a family member or financial stake or something like that.
Right.
We either have to disclose those or recuse ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want to tell us a little bit about the project? I know there's been some discussion about it, but do you want to give us the broad strokes and then?
Sure. Yep, I came here to start off. The first thing I thought of is that George Chase and I had a conversation. I invited him up to my property on Academy Hill because I wanted to discuss an apartment building I wanted to build. And he started telling me about the low income housing and how there might be money as much as like $175,000 per apartment as an incentive for the state, because there's really, I guess, limited places for people low income to live. And so it took me about a year to get through that whole thing. And I don't know if you all are familiar with that whole thing, but It's not something that I wanted to get into, mostly because I'd be dead before it was paid off. And then the town or the state would be left with a dilapidated building. Because you can't fix them up along the way. So that turned me off with that particular thing. And there's other reasons as well. So also, there is low-income housing going in at the bottom of Academy Hill on the Mills Road. As you all must know, because you approved the permit. And I think those are 2 60 by 60 buildings. Maybe 3 or 4 stories, 3 stories maybe. And so that's gonna help with the low-income housing, I would think. There's no place for anybody to live in Newcastle right now. It's a big problem. And so I started turning my focus to just the average Newcastle person who might work at the bank or at the hospital or at Lincoln Academy or whatever. I also started focusing my attention on the fact that there's hardly anywhere for people with disabilities to live in Newcastle and Damariscotta. It's just rural and it's not set up for it. So I added elevators to my project. I started my project here in 2002, and I've been discussing the project with Michael Martone for that time. And we've gone back and forth more times than I can count about changes that may need to be made to it. On our first meeting, I proposed a 45-foot tall 4-story building. That it was in keeping with my father's building next door, the old Plano Tire building that I rebuilt for him, which is 45 feet tall. And when I met with George and Michael, Mike just said, you know, it had a flat roof on it. And this property is in the manufacturing district. I was trying to get my hands on that piece of paper that says what can and can't be built there just a minute ago, but I didn't have time to do that. But I think you guys have changed that quite a bit in the time that I've been working on this, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to build according to what was instead of what you've changed. So Michael suggested, instead of a flat roof, putting a pitched roof on it. So I made that change. That was a big change. And if I put a pitched roof on, I could use that space for more apartments. Another change was Ben suggested that manufacturing buildings should probably have a taller ceiling on the first floor, and, you know, to make sure there was room for manufacturing. So I made those changes, and I also went from 2-bedroom apartments to 3-bedroom apartments. They all have at least 2 sides of windows looking out to exterior walls. And the ones on the ends have 3. There's 16 apartments, and they're all really nice apartments, not high end, not the bottom of the barrel, but someplace that a family could live in. You know, parents with 2 kids or whatever. Like I said, I have 1 child still at Lincoln and 1 that graduated 2 years ago. So my goal was to create a apartment building where folks like us could live. and folks that need assistance to get to a higher story. Like Damascus has some really nice apartments on third floors, that I can't get to, if I wanted to, so that's a consideration of mine. Thinking about the Lincoln home, I was not going towards elderly care, but just the size of that structure, you know, the addition that they put on right on the river right there. It's a pretty big structure. And so this structure that I'm putting up is 40 by 120. That's the footprint. And if you add up the two apartment buildings for the low income at the bottom of the hill, 60 by 60 is obviously 60 by 120 footprint. So it's a bigger footprint altogether too. So comparative projects going on at the same time, one with state funding. And one of the things that the state provides, I don't know if you know this or not, but if you're a developer, it gives you a lump sum amount of money for being the developer. So the more the project costs, the more that goes up. I think I was thinking about a $5 million project. They were gonna give me $270,000 as a developer. Just that was for me. It would have been for me, just on the side, didn't have to go towards the project at all. I think that's the incentive for the developers who are developing around the state. Because I can't think of any other one. So I could go further into that if anybody wanted me to, but really I'm just here to get my permit to build this building on Academy Hill.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we have to discuss application completeness. You know, Michael has concerns that the application doesn't contain all the necessary things, or doesn't address all the necessary things that we would need to do a review for an application permit. And so do you want to review what those are?
Sure.
At the moment?
Yeah,
And just see.
I can answer any question you have.
Yeah, no, and I, you know, as Andrew said, him and I have been going back and forth, and there's trying to get some of these documents, and we have had, you know, a number of conversations. So I think that, so I went through this. The application form, we've got that, you know, it might need to be updated, but we've got an application form. We do have deeds, I think 2 different ones that basically show, or 3 that show that Z38 owns the property, and that Xander is allowed to act on their behalf. And I think, I don't know if you're the president, or either way.
It's just an LLC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got a letter from Great Salt Bay, basically saying that an 18-unit apartment building could go there. It probably would need to be updated, but because it was, I think, for you know, an older version of the project, but 18 units is probably.
You're talking about sanitary district.
Sanitary district, yes, not the
Yeah.
school. My apologies for not clarifying that.
Yeah, they had no problem.
Yeah, there was public notice issued at some point when we originally had got this going. And I'm just going through the list of all of like the requirements here. So
I did do that.
yeah, and so what we have that, I think, given the changes in the project and all that, if we're going to move forward, we probably would want to have a new public hearing to make sure that you know everything's kosher.
Public hearing. What does that entail?
Every meeting of the planning board is technically a public hearing. So,
Oh, right.
yeah.
It's just basically, yeah, and that would just be like a notice to the residents. I think it's within 250 feet maybe of the property. Just
Yeah.
they can come and say their piece.
Yeah.
So site plan, existing conditions. And so, and I should also say that it's one of the conversations that Xander and I had was, I think I included this in the packet here, was an email there's a couple of emails that we went back and forth in March and April, and I tried to provide basically a list of all of the items that we would need. Like, here's a checklist. Once I have all of this, we can go to the planning board. And this was, planning board, we've discussed a lot of this as well. So anyway, so now this is the same list. This is what I'm going through is that site plan.
Can I say, Michael, the reason that that's probably, that portion of it's not complete is because at this point, I'm thoroughly confused as to what to do. The last version of my plans that I did was under sort of guidance from George Chase saying, and you were at that meeting in my office, it said, well, if you just made this an addition to your existing building, wouldn't that do away with the virtual lot lines and stuff like that? So I made that change and I added 2 buildings together. So I just want everybody, just little bits that I can add in as we go.
Yeah. No, and Xander has, when as we were identifying changes, was making changes that we try to, I try to flag any major issues that is an obvious conflict with the code, so that when an application gets to the board, it's relatively straightforward. There's nothing obvious. So the site plan showing the existing buildings and the proposed buildings is submitted. You also have a 3D visualization of the I think it's just the existing property. All right, so the site plan proposed, we don't have a landscaping plan. There's not a lighting plan.
There is
some information about the lighting.
Yeah, my architect did put the lights on there, and I did specify that they're the same lights that I'm using on my shop, and the same lights that when we remodeled the old Polino Tire Building, which is now called Sunside, are those same lights and fixtures and textures and color and all that stuff.
So
and there was some square footage of lumens. Which I looked up on Google and I don't know how, but anyway, the lights are gonna be, in keeping with the neighborhood. I don't want to do anything that's like, well, I mean, when the lights turn on at Lincoln for a game, it's not gonna be like that.
Yeah, right. And so I should, we can clarify that they're on some of the elevations, the lights are shown, but the lighting level and the color and the things that are specified by the code, that information, you'll see some of, and I know you have seen some applicants will do a lighting, like a site plan that shows the lumens every 2 feet or something like that. So we don't have that. We do have the lights are shown on the actual building.
And the landscape plans, I just want to hit on these just real quick. There is a plan. At first, there was no plan for parking. There is a plan for parking, and the landscaping is minimal. It's about the same as what's there now because there's not a whole lot of room on that property. But yeah, keep going.
Circulation plan. There is a potential path for vehicles that's shown, but the width and details of the route aren't really provided. There's no sidewalks or footpaths that are shown either. Parking plan, there's a rough sketch of about 8 parking spaces, but doesn't seem to be scaled, and the dimensions of the parking spaces or the other necessary circulation isn't provided.
Is that necessary?
Yeah.
At first, there was no parking necessary in Newcastle. Obviously, I'm gonna have parking, otherwise it wouldn't work, but that's why I didn't go into that. If I had known in the beginning, like if I had known most of this stuff in the beginning, I would have gone more towards, doing this stuff. So
and this
trying to moving target. I'm trying to, I've got somebody who's done a very thorough survey of the property. He's got this drone that does everything.
Well, with the parking, and maybe this is, some of the confusion might be that there are not parking minimums in Newcastle, so technically you could propose a project and not have any parking, and
Right.
that would,
That was
that
my
wouldn't
understanding.
preclude it. However, if you're gonna have parking, there are standards that do need to be met, and so that's the information that the planning board would need to review and say, okay, if you have parking,
So no
does it
parking.
circulate, all of that.
So no parking. And also the sidewalks, there are nice sidewalks on there. I don't know if they're shown, but
Yeah.
and there's crosswalks.
Yeah, off the property, right, and so that's.
Yeah.
But that
There's the
wasn't on
granite-
there.
granite curb.
Circulation, okay, parking plan, touched on that. Erosion control, there's some rough road erosion control plan. There are some, like, the ordinance also calls for like a description, and some of this stuff probably is more relevant when you actually get to the construction phase, but
Myers
we have-
Worker did do the erosion plan that he does on every project I do.
okay, and that's, so there may be more information that we still need.
Okay.
Archaeological survey, there's no evidence that there's going to be anything that's archaeological relevant here. Okay, so that was all the site plans. Building plans, we do have building plans, a set of building plans was included, including floor plans, and not really interested in the internal workings of the building. We have a roof plan, building elevations. There's a window and door schedule, or the window and door schedule was not provided, and the information on exterior materials wasn't provided. Overview explanation.
No, I
Okay,
think the
and then-
materials, the exterior.
Michael, I think on the back page of the plan, there's a window and door schedule.
I think there was a listing of the, and I can pull that up. I think there was a listing of like the windows. I can double check and see.
Yeah.
Because some of the information that we need is we need to determine what the ratio of window to not windowed
Right.
area is, and
We
basically
did all
just need
that.
the rough openings.
Yeah, we did all that for sure, and then the surface, there couldn't be. That's when we started to get into this more sticky stuff of. There couldn't be a straight wall more than 50 feet. Without a jog.
Right.
That was a costly change in the plans, not only for changing the plans, but construction wise, just to add a jog,
Right, yeah.
But that was done, and the material textures and differences for siding was done. The roofing, the trim, all that stuff.
I don't see that I've got any
Okay.
materials, but
Okay,
which again, if you get me and all of this, then
Melissa,
until I have it, I can't give it to the planning board, so.
could I have the information that you brought with us tonight? And I'll let you keep going. I'm just gonna have her drop this off.
Yeah, no, and that's essentially it. It's really, there's some site plan information that's missing. Building
What's
plans,
the site plan stuff that's missing?
landscape plan, lighting
Oh, yeah,
plan,
so-
circulation, all of that. So
Well,
that's where that is. And I shared all of that with you, so.
and just for the sake of completeness, the one thing I would share, I think had been noted before, maybe. Nowhere in the submitted application does it actually show. It shows the proposed building, but
Wait, can I have a chair?
and it has dimensions for the building. But it doesn't have any dimensions that show where it actually is on the lot.
Oh, yeah.
So like,
Yeah, it does. It's,
On the
I mean,
site development. It's the darker.
I think you guys might be
You-
missing
you-
some pages or
Well, I think,
something.
Ben, are you talking about like setbacks and the distance from yeah, so it shows the location of the building on the lot. It just doesn't show the distance of the building from the lot lines. So like we can see where it,
Setbacks
Yes, it
on
does. Come
Okay.
on, guys.
everything, all lot lines, I made sure.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, I paid my
And then
surveyor
I
over,
had to take everything off of the property that was gonna be taken off so that we could just see what was gonna be there, so you could see both.
yeah, remember all that stuff. It's
Well-
been 2 years, so.
I mean, I'm looking at the stuff and like. The lot dimensions are there, but there's nothing that shows. You know, that the proposed building is gonna be X number of feet from the lot line.
Okay, you just don't have it, that's all.
And that, and if, yeah,
We can get it to you, it's no problem, I mean, that's simple, super simple. Who's clicking the pen over there?
That's-
Can we stop that?
That's my mouse.
What are we clicking away there?
That's my mouse.
What are you clicking on?
I've got 18 documents I'm flipping through.
Okay,
Sorry,
yeah, it's just, I don't know,
I'm sorry.
that's okay.
I'm trying to
Click, click,
like
click, click.
zoom in on things and
Mhm.
figure out what we're talking about.
Yeah,
I see-
it must be hard.
I see-
To do it from,
it might be, like, I think I do see that there is the setback lines on here. It's just, they're not, just not labeled. It's possibly the,
surveyor just didn't do his job.
if I'm looking at the
I
same.
mean, I have a bigger one at the office and it's a lot easier to read, you want 24 by 36, you
Yeah.
can see everything, I know some of these are kind of small, but. He has all of that right here. None of them either.
Yeah, so this I did include in here, but I'm just not sure.
There's a lot of detail, I know that, that's why I included the drone as well, you
Yeah.
can see it from the.
5 foot setback. Yep, okay.
I hope you put them in.
Oh,
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
I just want you guys to know that I'm a builder, I've been doing this for a long time, it's the only thing I've done as a profession. So I know what is generally, I just think that, it's gone a little far.
I think
In this instance.
This is what this document is. Well, it's this,
That's what I was looking
and
at.
it does show the 5 foot setback,
The,
although.
the version that I've got, you can't read most of the text. It's like a scan of a very small print. I can't read most of
What-
what's on.
What document do you have? Is it
It was-
something that I
so-
dropped off
It
or
was-
is it a
That's what we got
photocopy?
Yeah.
from
It's
the
that.
surveyors, yeah, from
The
Nicholas.
digital version of that.
What I have is
It's the
the,
one,
It's
and
a,
it's a lot easier to read.
yeah, I have the tablet version or tabloid version, the like 11 by 17.
yeah,
That's what I scanned in and shared,
Right.
so.
oh, so maybe,
Melissa, I could go get it.
maybe it's.
I have it. in
No,
the office.
no. It's not necessary. right
Okay.
now.
Do you want me to have one printed up for this next time that we do all of
If
this?
you, yeah, I mean, I think the easiest thing is digital, but so if they have actual files,
I'm
I
not
want
sure
to share
that
them.
but Ben's got the digital right there.
Yeah,
Well, I scanned them.
I just
Oh.
can't,
Okay,
share.
he can't.
I
So-
can't,
So
I
Ben,
can't
that
see
may
that it's
be
on.
part of the problem, is that it
There's
was.
a lot of
it was
information.
scanned
Yeah.
That's
in.
why I had to take like the trailer that's there out and all the other,
Yeah.
like the Connex buildings he has. I had
They
to
had
take that
asked
all
for that.
out so that we could just see what it was looking like with the building and.
Yeah. Okay, and that's in,
But I can have both of those drawn up and you can actually look at them and see.
Well, no, they want a digital copy, but I can email you a digital copy, so you don't have to scan it. I don't
that would
know.
be great. I think that's
That
what
would
the
be
board
perfect.
prefers.
It would, yeah.
If,
Yeah.
so if you have
So,
that capability, that would be.
Did we ask, did you ask for that, or is it something that I totally missed, or?
I essentially try to, when I get anything from the applicants, I try to just make it work.
I think
If
the
you've got-
town asks for paper copies.
Yeah, and if you give, and we took the paper copies and that's fine, that's what I shared. I don't think with this, for this issue, I don't think the small print on this is the issue now. I think the issue is there's still just some documents because the process that I'm trying to go through, and I think the planning board's trying to get to is, that when I get applications from applicants, that I can say, okay, well, we've got the site plan, I've got
Right.
all the things that I listed out there. Great, okay, now I've got it, and now I will take all of it to the planning board. It's not so much about you know, is there, I mean, I try to get as much complete information as possible, but once I get all that information, then we'll sit down with the planning board and go through and say, you know, is the standard met? If there's no information, it's hard to determine if the standard's been met. So
And it that's, sounds like some of the reason for the lack of the information isn't necessarily that I didn't give it to you.
I think there's just been a lot of.
It's
reasons
that,
yeah,
Well,
and I
no.
think that's
That we've
Well,
been
no.
submitting over and
Well,
over, you know,
hang on,
go ahead, sorry.
1 second. Is that I've given the information, but it's not been shared with a lot of clarity. Nobody's fault, it's just the way our age of asking for paper copies. I give you the paper copies, they get scanned and everything gets, I mean, I'm about to build a building for someone. And he doesn't even have plans he can read. That he got from the company he got the building from. And so. It is frustrating when you can't.
Well, I have, it is easier when there's one application thing comes in together.
Yeah.
What I have done though is I've taken everything that I've gotten along the line here, I take it, I consolidate it, and I put it together. And that's essentially what you know, when I went through this, if I got the deeds one day and I got the application form another day, you know, it's fine. And that's why I said, you know, we've got something from sanitary district that shows that, you know,
Right,
that it's serviceable, that they could,
right,
you're not going to overwhelm their system.
right.
Great, even though if there might be a quite slight modification that's needed, that's not really a big deal. I bring it to the planning board and say, okay, this is fine. Can you get us an updated version? Okay, that's, you know, they can do that.
I have a question.
But I just need to get all of the documents together that at least big pictures, like can we start reviewing the lighting standards? Can we start reviewing the landscaping? Can we start reviewing the building and all of that? Not so much as every little detail there. Because if there's one little thing missing, planning board can say, you know what, we can hold off but until we have a generally complete application, I don't want to keep coming back to the planning board. I think that's
Right.
generally been the direction that I've gone. So,
Yeah.
so that's when I said that I don't have a complete application.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right, well, because it's been a moving target. These things have come up gradually.
Right, and that's why let me see, I think in April, no, in March, I shot you an email with just a list. You know, I think I listed the 8 things, and granted there are some subcategories in there, but I sent you 8 things that what I think is fair for me to say, here's a list. You get me, you know, something that can check the box for each of these, go to the planning board.
Yeah, I feel like I've done all this stuff more than once. More than once, more than twice, more than 3 times, because.
Well, and you have been updating the plan, which is, you know,
And that's, and updating the plan because that's what was required. And so when the plan changes, maybe some of that stuff changes, but
Right.
it does seem like it's been a moving target.
well, and I do have several, I don't know if they're site plans, I mean, several building plans, because I know you've changed the building quite a bit. But I don't think I don't have one landscape plan.
See, that's where I think we had a little bit of confusion, because I think we were sitting at the table and talking to George about it. And I asked him about that, and he said that if we had it included on our drawings, which we did, they're in color. that's
And the
where-
renderings.
That would be okay. So I think that's why we're like, what do you mean? We need
Yeah.
so do we need like to have some professional landscaper write this up for us? or something?
Right.
An architectural design person or something.
And
So
that,
I think that there was, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? There's been a little bit of miscommunication with that too.
yeah, and that's, you know,
'Cause
one of
I've
the
been
things I would
trying.
like to,
I've been trying to, I've been really trying to get everything,
yeah, no, and I
you know.
do recognize that. And I think this is the
I've been trying very
communication
hard too.
between, and George is not with the town anymore, not because of this or anything relating to this. Fan of George's.
There too.
But I think that's, you know, the workflow is something that we need to streamline, but so I apologize if, George was saying one thing and I'm saying something else, but
I think we were just trying to figure out what.
yeah.
really-
And I know he has, and I said, yeah, great, if you want to talk to George, that's fine. I know he's just trying to be helpful,
Right.
was trying to be helpful. So which is great, but at the end of the day, this is, this list that I sent was like, if George helps you get to it, wonderful, but this is what I was trying to get together so that I would bring it to the plan.
Well, when the traffic plan was the draw up, he actually drew that for us, and then I just redrew what he drew.
Okay.
And then when you said that wasn't gonna be.
Yeah, we need to.
It's like,
right.
okay, well, that's what he drew it for me, and then he said this would be fine, so that's why I'm like, okay, well, that's obviously it's not.
That I think is the why it's important to be clear that for when it's CEO review, CEO gets to make their decisions and they interpret the code and they have that, and when it's planning board review or when planning board review is required, then it's like these 5 people together get to make the decision of, does this meet the standard? Does it show that it meets the standard? So it's kind of like, who's the decision maker in the given situation? So I'm sure he basically was saying, yeah, he may have said this looks like it should be fine for the planning board, but.
And they're just kind of tying it to like a, sort of like a roundabout, if you will, because you can enter from 38 Academy or from 21 T. So
Right.
they're both roads.
Yeah.
That are there in Newcastle. So I didn't really think that I needed to do like measuring.
Yeah. And I think, and I won't, this is my kind of my professional opinion, it's not the board's decision, is I think the roads that are already existing there, I don't think we're not too worried about those, assuming that they're general. It's like, it's the stuff that's on the site that's going to be new, that is more important. That's not to say that the planning board's not going to care about the road that's already there.
All that landscaping hostas and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's on the front bit of the plan.
So I feel like I did the lighting plan. I feel like I
We've got
did,
lights on the building, we
Right.
just don't have a description of what kind they are.
no, I think there is actually a description Nick put on there, but. So this is part of it. So going through your list just real quick, I feel like that I did. Almost everything that was asked of me, and that's why I'm confused is. Just to get to the point of saying, is this a building we want Newcastle? Does Newcastle need an apartment building? Do we think Xander's a good one to build the building? Does he do good work? Is there examples around here of his work? And I feel like I've been going around and around, and every time I go around, there's more changes.
Well,
And I really want to get to this point, and I feel like I have a full-time job. As it is, I got up at 4 this morning, was on site all day, and I'm dead beat tired. I don't do this as a full-time job, but I want to build this. I
Yeah.
think this would be a great addition to Newcastle.
Well, and I recognize that, and that's why once I had this and we had a conversation, I don't know if it was in August, that I said, you know what, like, I don't think that this is ready for the board, but I'm going to take it to the board, and but then they can, because I don't want to be the one that says like, I want to make sure that what I'm telling you is generally the direction the board's.
Yeah.
And so that's why, we put you on the agenda. I think it was in August. I admittedly forgot to put you on in September. We weren't in communication. I was away, so that's why you weren't on in September. And that's why you're on now.
Yeah.
So this is like, essentially the conversation is like, so you see the conversation that we've been having, and I'm trying to get this, I need this information.
Let me ask the board.
So now I want the board to basically say, is this something that you want, is it ready for your review, or is this something that should continue to work with the applicant to
Right.
get a closer to complete application?
Yeah, I want to ask, to me, the work that I've done on this and the architectural plans in the last 2 years. Has been steadily going towards what I've been suggested to do, you know, by town planner or code enforcement or Ben or whoever, but I've been really trying to get together everything that the town needs. And it seems to me like I have the meat and potatoes here, and there's very little that's missing as far as looking at this as an overall project. I just think that we've got some very minor details, like a landscaping plan for this lot, and erosion plan, which the erosion plan's already included. I have landscaping on the lot already that's not gonna change. I was unaware that there had to be parking. That's why I didn't include parking. I wanna have that be my choice to do in the future. I think that things have been kind of put in front of me one after the other, and it's been tricky. I have been after this for 2 years. And for you guys, I would think you'd be able to say, you know, yeah, I mean, geez, he's got the building here. The lot's right on Academy Hill. It's pretty straightforward. It's a small lot. You know, yeah, the lumens aren't here just the way we want them. But I don't see what one big thing is that's like holding this project back. I just want to know, like, am I doing all this for nothing? I've spent a small fortune on it, and I think it's something that the town needs, like I said. And if you can't read something that's been scanned in or whatever, that seems like some small detail that could be ironed out, you know, pretty quickly. Or where are you planting hostas or green grass or whatever? To me, I mean, there's a huge amount of work that's gone into this. I'm not.
So let me just answer that and then explain a little bit about the process, I guess. We on the planning board do not have broad discretion to waive requirements for applications. The code is very specific. And the issue is that if there is something that the code requires and that the application does not address, we have no way to measure whether or not it meets the code or not, regardless of how large or small it is, which does technically mean that any small thing missing could lead to a no permit issue scenario. So we don't have the authority. There's no authority in the code that's granted to the planning board to say, you don't need the lumens. It says specifically, you have to show what the light fixtures produce in terms of lumens and what they fall on. You have to show that. You have to show parking if you're going to provide 10 or more spaces. You have to show that so that we can review it against the standards in the code. If we don't have it, we can't review it, and it will have to, our hands are tied. We will have to vote to not approve the application. We don't have an option. So I understand what you're saying, and I understand your frustration. I get it. But the reality is that because of the way the code is written, everything that has to be addressed must be addressed. We have to have a metric. We have to have a, you know, if it's not a parking plan, a landscaping plan. And that's an important thing. For example, there is no parking requirement in Newcastle. However, if you're going to provide parking and it's 10 spaces or more, we do require that you follow the code to show what it is. Conversely, any spaces that are not designated as parking, there must be a landscaping plan, even if it's just on that top-down view that shows grass planting with a line that shows here's where the grass is and here's where the trees are. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be done by a landscape architect by any means, but it has to be shown so that we can. Unfortunately, no. Yeah. So all I'm getting at is, while it seems like, nitpicking or whatever, the reality from, I think, the town's perspective is that the CEO and the town planner have been doing their best to try and cross all those Ts and dot all those Is so that we can get a successful application, a complete application to the planning board for review. And it's always in the best interest of any applicant to have a complete review so that it can be reviewed. Lacking that, you really, we're not going to review it, but you wouldn't want us to anyway. It wouldn't be in your best interest.
It
So,
sounded, Ben, last time I was here, just to reiterate what you said last time, was that basically if those Is were dotted and those Ts were crossed, you didn't ever see where it would not be approved. I mean, that was a general sense. And I don't mean his project, I mean projects in general.
all right, so let's just clarify a couple things real quick and use the correct terminology.
Okay.
At one point, there was a pre-submittal meeting. So pre-submittal is a process defined in the code where an applicant can come and say, I've got an idea for a project, and maybe they have some documentation, maybe they don't have documentation. And it's an opportunity for the applicant to really familiarize themselves with the code, gets their questions answered. It's not a formal vote of the planning board at all. It's just, hey, we're going to need this, we're going to need that. Think about this, or you might think about this other thing a different way. And we do that. I think it's required for all large project plans, is a pre-submittal meeting. So we had that. But if you understood from that meeting that we would automatically grant an approval if the Ts and Is were dotted, that was not the intention, because we can't say that. It was, we will review it if the Ts and the Is are dotted and crossed and dotted, or whatever the case may be, but we can't promise approval ever.
But can I just also make one point, which is if an applicant comes and submits all of the documents that are needed and provides all of the information so the planning board can look at it and say, here's a standard, this is what you're proposing, standards met, like that.
It looks good.
Then it gets harder, then there's less of a reason. The planning board can't just say, we don't like your project.
Right.
Get out.
Correct.
It's basically, if you show met all the standards,
yeah.
Then the planning board, basically make the planning board's job very hard to reject a project that they might not like, which we are, this board is very professional and they would never do that. But it's, you have an application that meets all the standards.
Well, I'll go further and say we just don't have the authority.
Yeah.
We flat out, we must review based on the standard.
Yeah.
We cannot interject personal bias, period. So yeah, so
Because
that's.
if we have personal bias, then we shouldn't step down. Bias, we should
So-
step down, we shouldn't even be voting, so.
Yeah, why bother even having the committee then? I mean, if all the boxes are checked.
Sometimes there's
Hey,
interpretation, it's.
Well, the only way you ensure that all the boxes are checked is if there's a committee. And then make sure that first they have to make sure that there's a, credible evidence on the record for the standard to be met. And the standard is actually met. You could say on a plan, you write on a plan, I won't cause any light pollution. That's not credible evidence of what the lighting will be on the building. But it might be enough to pass the idea of you've made a statement about lighting. So that's the difference.
And the other reason, the follow through reason for having all that documentation is not just to make busy work for the applicant. It's to provide a document trail so that, throughout the building of the process and after the project is completed, the town can go and say, okay, you built what you said you were going to build, or you didn't build what you said you were going to build, and we need to figure out how to address that. So all those things have to be addressed so that there is an archive for the permit. And that's applied across all applications that are required to come to the planning board. all applications, period. So I think at this time, even though it may seem like only a few little things are missing, because there are a few little things missing, there is no way that we can deem the application complete, and we'll vote on that formally in just a second. But it gives you the opportunity to provide those
I don't
things.
think there's any voting necessary. It's not complete. I just wrote down 10 things that you guys need. And then
If we're not considering this a application submission, then no, we don't need to.
I mean, the last question that I have is, during the last 2 years of me working on this project, when I bought this piece of property and, you know, I grew up there. My father had property, still has property. My brother has property. I think what I have heard is that the codes have changed in that specific manufacturing district between the railroad tracks and Route 1. And if that's true, what has changed about it, and will that affect my project that I've been working on for 2 years?
So this is kind of where the rubber meets the road. And this is why we are talking so much about complete application, because the application is not considered. Once the application is considered complete, it can then be reviewed. Until that moment in time when the application is considered complete, it's not an application. It's been submitted to the town, but it hasn't been considered complete. So your rights in being reviewed under this version of the code or that version of the code or whatever are not vested until the application is deemed complete. That's an important distinction.
But you can't answer that question about the codes, right?
The planning board cannot give legal advice.
I didn't ask for any.
No,
legal
that's.
advice.
No, I'm just outlining procedure.
I understand that, but his question was asking for legal advice. You can't give it.
I'm not going to.
What are you talking about?
All
I'm
I-
not asking for legal advice. I'm sitting here with fellow people from Newcastle discussing my building project.
Xander, you said, what have the changes been to the ordinance in the last 2 years that would affect your project? That's inherently legal advice.
So,
Okay, have any codes changed in the area that I own property in?
I mean, we can,
That's still legal advice. You
Yeah.
can't answer the question.
what we can say is what we would say to every applicant, which is that once the application is deemed complete, then it can be reviewed, and it must be reviewed under the terms in the code at that date.
But I've already submitted an application for this, so technically. August 9th, there was a law passed that said you can't do that. You can't change a code on somebody who's already working on a project like this. You just can't, I mean, thank God that law was passed. I was gonna bring my $400 an hour lawyer here to have fun with you tonight. And I decided not to do that because that's really not where I wanna go. But now you're telling me I'm asking them for legal advice. I'm asking about codes.
So if you have questions about the code, I would direct you to the town planner, because he can absolutely have those conversations with you and show you the ins and outs of the rules as they exist for that fabrication district.
Yep.
We cannot.
Oh,
So can you email that?
interesting.
Is that something?
yeah, it's on the town website,
Okay,
but I can certainly email you.
Yeah.
a copy of it.
I know that Rob would like one, I'd like one, and my brother would like one, just because we're all there in that area.
Is there also like an archive of prior?
No,
Oh,
not,
like the
I don't
prior
think,
codes.
I mean, I have them. I don't know if there's an archive, but I can There's only one. I don't believe have there been.
So how long has that been?
I don't think there was.
All right,
there were
sorry, I'm
changes
gonna
since the
cut this
original.
conversation off just a little bit because we're getting off the topic here. We're talking about, in the agenda, we're talking about whether the application is complete or not. If you have questions regarding specifics about the zoning code, you can have the conversation with the town planner at another time.
And I'll just say, I will send you the current one and the last one, and then
Okay.
I will just confirm that I was.
Answer a yes or no question for me, Mike,
Maybe.
town planner. Have the codes changed in the fabrication district of Newcastle in the last 2 years?
Can't answer the question.
Ben just asked me to talk to the town planner.
Not in a public hearing meeting like this. You can consult with the town planner, but we can't issue statements.
Yeah.
So
We get
the
into
question
trouble there.
is because it's a public meeting. It's not
No,
whether or
the
not he
question
can
is-
ask him the question.
He can ask him the question and Mike can do what Mike wants to do as the planner. The planning board cannot give legal advice, and this is getting close to giving legal advice. So what it would do is it would bind the planning board potentially to a decision on an issue that they haven't fully considered. Right? If the planning board rules and says, oh yeah, there are many changes, let's just say that that's what you said. And then it turned out there had been changes. Well, now what happens? Now is everybody biased? Or do you have a situation where you can't apply the law? Do you have to impanel a new planning board and, wait 2 months to fill the planning board? I mean, you're looking at all of those issues if you give legal advice. You just can't do it.
That's okay, he can talk to you tomorrow, correct? Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
that's
not
fine.
here, that's fine,
That's fine.
that'll work.
Does anyone
How
else have
times
anything?
have changed.
Does anyone else have anything else they want to say to the board regarding the application completeness? I think we've covered it pretty thoroughly.
Yeah, what? So,
I would say so too. I got it. All written down, shiny ink.
is there? So
I know
my
exactly.
understanding is that there are some things that Xander's gonna work on submitting, and there's still some things that, unless I'm told otherwise, that I need until we're gonna get an application that I'm gonna bring back to the board. Is my understanding.
Yeah.
So.
Good. Thank you very much. All right, we're gonna move on to other business. Item A, proposed shoreland zoning amendment.
This is,
So
this
this
should
is
be
a
pretty
really
quick.
tiny one.
Yes, it is. We just updated the shoreline zoning ordinance. When I sent that up to the state for review. One of the things that the state that they kind of or that we were trying to do was kick the administration of the timber harvesting regulations, which we already have adopted. We already had the state's regulations. We wanted to have them also administer it, take it off of the code enforcement officer's plate. But the only things that needed to happen, the only real thing that needs to happen is on here, land management roads still require planning board approval or review in the resource protection. It's the only thing. But so I'm taking what they suggested was just take land management roads and forest management activities, except for timber harvesting and land management roads, off of the land use. So that's what I'm proposing.
That's the whole change. Would that be considered de minimis?
I don't think so, unfortunately.
Okay.
I'd love to give you that answer. but it's-
No, it's fine. I mean,
So
it's fine.
next, I don't think it's a super critical thing, but the next time that we get some, so anyway, I'd like to send to the select board to have them, direct us to have following our process, direct us to have a public hearing on that.
On that change, just that.
Then then it makes the state happy and our intentions, right, the way I understood them, having them administer tree harvesting in shoreline zone will be good. So.
Okay.
I imagine it'll be not a very controversial, possibly not very well attended public hearing, but
So I'll go ahead and make a motion that we submit the changes to the select board for consideration for a future public hearing. Second, thank you, Scott. Any further discussion about the changes to the shoreline zoning? All in favor? Passes 5-0.
Great, okay. The other item was, let me think how to approach it. Okay. So there is in the fabrication district there, Kevin has been speaking with Mr. Blood, who's here, about a property. Essentially what we found is, or what he's found is, there's a need for more buildings, more other structures. I think there are additional structures. And in the fabrication district, the standards seem to be a bit burdensome. And so Kevin's thought
Or the
was,
types of uses that are permitted there.
yes, yeah, exactly. So this is a permitted use. It's a boat shop repair facility and storage in the winter, and which is a permitted use. The issue is that there are, I will tell you exactly what the use is. 1 sec. Basically, it's marina dry storage, which is a permitted use in the fabrication district. The issue is that additional structures, I think they're only allowed to be like 300 square feet. The need is for something that could basically cover a not small boat. The boats, you see them shrink wrapped. It's not really that different. Though you can store the boat shrink wrapped, but you can't have like a silo over the boat because it's a kind of a standalone structure. So the conversation is either do we rezone that parcel or part of the fabrication district to marine, which does not have those standards for alternate structures, or do we reduce or adjust the standards for fabrication to allow larger, I guess essentially unscreened additional structures. So, my personal professional thinking is that leaving the fabrication district intact, but allowing for loosening the requirements around additional structures makes a lot of sense. And that just by kind of adding, this is not near the marine district. So to have kind of like one outlier over that, I think the marine district is really supposed to be like waterside stuff, but either way, how do we get there? Is it appropriate to, is that something the planning board would consider? We don't have anything written up, but I wanted to bring that up with the planning board and get your take on it before we start down that path.
Is the permitted building referring to as labeled residential accessory?
It would
Is that
not.
the building type that on the table that you're saying you need to.
No, so those there's the in the permitted building types, there's single unit commercial, multi-use, commercial accessories. Those can all have like a unit in them, whether it's a residential or a commercial unit. Additional structures are not, you can't put like a dwelling unit in an additional structure. You can't put like couldn't have a business in an additional structure.
Right.
A lot of times it's like maybe a chicken coop or something like that. That's not quite to the level of an accessory structure.
Right.
So in this case, it would be a shrink wrapped wood framed. It's unheated. You couldn't live in it. Yeah,
Right.
It's a boat shed.
Can we just real quick? I'm in the code. I'm on page 50, top of the page, item 9, additional structures. I just want to read the purpose and applicability out loud real quick. The purpose, number 1, to allow for additional structures that support activities associated with primary and accessory buildings. 2, to minimize visual impacts from private and public spaces. Then applicability says applies to any structure on a lot, not including primary or accessory buildings, such as, but not limited to, garden sheds. Number two, does not apply to temporary structures. That's a different topic. Temporary structures. So, and then it has, under general, it has criteria for the standards, there's screening standards, and then there's a table that lists all the districts and shows within those districts, the maximum square footage for additional structures. So your suggestion, your thought is we've already got it here.
Yeah.
Just the numbers are not appropriate potentially for the fabrication district, and the use within the uses that are allowed within the fabrication district would naturally require larger additional structures just by virtue of their type of business they're engaged in.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't, not only would they do the businesses that are there or that seem like they would be appropriate and are permitted in fabrication district, or would they be necessary? They seem, compatible with those uses, having larger additional structures and reduced screening requirements, especially given where the fabrication district is. It's between Route 1 and just the nature of fabrication, I think, is maybe a little not necessarily offensive, but it's a little less.
It's more industrial,
guys.
Yeah.
Which is good. It's good to have that.
Yeah.
So
what
thoughts?
Is there a proposed size? I mean, 300 feet is not big enough for very many boats.
Right.
So what is?
I guess that would be
That's
the
the
next question.
Because we're talking about boat roof sheds. We're talking about plastic wrap.
Yeah. And it wouldn't be specifically for that.
Or
but it could-
I'm not
yeah.
going to specify materials, but what size do we?
Yeah.
So we do use boat roof sheds, but in the future, I have 2 unheated storage buildings that are steel, they're wood frame steel structures. They're 30 by 100 feet. Each of them. So would I be able to put another one of those up? Because that is a storage building.
We can't answer
It's
that question.
unheated. Okay, so
I'm
I'm
sorry, we can't speculate.
But maybe
So if we're
it's good information.
I'm opening that up because if we limit it to, you can put up a bow roof shed, then.
No, I wasn't
that's-
implying that, but yeah.
Right, and that is, to be clear,
So,
we can't, well, not that we can't, but I don't think we should get that specific with, it's gonna be a
Specific use.
certain
Yeah,
kind of-
right.
basically what we're talking about is right now, you can have an additional structure that's up to 300 square feet. Sounds like you're mentioning possibly a structure that would be up to 3,000 square feet.
That's the existing buildings. I would like to be able to go bigger than that.
Well,
Because
and
a
depending
30
on
buildings,
those, alternatively, there is the option, and maybe we can discuss this. With virtual lot lines and accessory commercial, like it might be, those may not be additional structures, those might be
True
accessory
structures.
buildings, or primary buildings, depending on how we're looking at this. So for consideration, I mean, maybe we do allow it would be I don't know, relatively large build, 3,000 square feet. Maybe that's too big, maybe that's not big enough. Maybe you want to go to, 10,000 square feet. I don't know.
Let's just, that's good information, but let's keep the conversation on topic, which
Yes, that's
your suggestion that we look at modifying the standards for additional structures. And because maybe they're not totally dialed in correctly.
Yeah.
So my only concern, my only comment I have is if we consider upping the max square footage per additional structure, how high would that number get before there needs to potentially be further standards placed on those additional structures so that it doesn't invite abuse?
Yeah. And I think that's the, you know, when we're talking about 3,000, 6,000, 10,000.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good one.
I think that's a good question and maybe, you know, there could be other, one of the things I'm thinking about right now is, you know, 300 square foot structure, probably don't have to worry too much about height. It's probably not going to get above, unless it's an agricultural like silo or something, but assuming it's like this 300 square feet, I don't know how tall. We might want to make sure that there are not story standard, but firm absolute height standards as well. I'm not saying anything crazy would be 10 feet, but it could be more than that. So maybe there's other things. If we're going to start expanding the footprint of additional structure, there may be other things we want to make sure we clarify too.
Yeah, I mean, under general, it has some guidance that says, number one, additional structures shall not contain a dwelling unit. And additional structures are permitted in conjunction with primary or accessory buildings and must be clearly incidental and subordinate in terms of area, size, use, and location. Shall be under the same ownership on the same lot as the primary or accessory building, which rules out the virtual lot potential path of abuse. Yes, for additional structures. And additional structures may be permitted on undeveloped lots, but only in those D1, D2, and SD conservation. So that's my only concern. I don't know if anybody else in any thoughts about. And I mean, are you looking? You're not looking for something tonight. You just wanted to make us aware of it, and then are you going to work on this?
Yeah, and
make a proposal.
Thoughts, basically, whatever you have, because right now I could go in all kinds of directions. So if there's concerns, I'd like to know them so that I can address them. But it sounds like the concern is they get too big, then they start to be real buildings.
Yeah, and at the moment, we actually don't limit the number of additional structures. So we do limit the number of primary buildings and accessory buildings on a lot. We do not limit the number of additional structures. So at what point, again, is the question, at what point, if we up the square footage max, is there potential for, you know, a build out of, you know, abuse of the intent of the district?
Yeah.
And then, because I mentioned, we're going to go back to the fabrication district page, which is on page.
Thirty-six, 37.
Thank you. And just read the description and purpose of that district real quick. The fabrication district allows a mix of industrial, office, retail, live, work, flex spaces, and other supporting development. The purposes there are three. One, to accommodate more intensive industrial uses in a way that is compatible with and in proximity to higher density residential areas. Two, to support existing industrial uses and provide an area for their expansion. Three, to allow for residential uses that are compatible with industrial activities. So I guess you're raising the point that perhaps purpose number two is falling short of its. Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
Can I also point out that it's been a marine business for 35 years. I know that the marine, there's one property in Newcastle that's zoned for marine, and it's Riverside. They're on the water. So I get why that would be considered a marine facility, but I also think we pretty clearly fall under that description. Of marine.
And marina dry storage is a permitted use in fabrication, probably because you were
But
somebody was there doing business there when the code was written.
But I don't understand why, why is it better to stay fabrication and not rezone it for what its actual purpose is?
Because the name of the district is less, is less, it isn't really relevant. So.
But the regulations in the district are relevant.
Yes, and that's.
We don't, so with, we've had a 60-foot boat in there. It's difficult to get under the bridge, by the way. But we've had a 60-foot boat in there. That wouldn't be a normal thing for say width to have.
Right.
in
Sure.
his
Which
yard.
my building and my process is
And-
manufactured.
Yeah, so
I-
they are there are two separate needs for what we're doing. We have a lot of need for roof space to cover the things we're doing.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't necessarily, if you have a manufacturing facility, such as what we're talking about with the other lot, you don't necessarily need, that's more of a manufacturing setting. You don't need a lot of covered space in order to do that. We're protecting people's boats, like old boats that we're working on. Wooden boats primarily is what we like to do. So we need the cover so that we can continue to work on them during inclement weather. We can't keep them anyway because we can't bake the wooden boats because it destroys them. So we're talking about large structures that have very little need for utilities or anything else.
Yeah, which is,
So instead of changing everything, if you just changed it to marine, then it eliminates those.
yeah, but it does create other, it creates potential other issues. Which, you know,
We can
if you,
discuss.
yeah, like if you wanted to cut a lot out of it, the marine, I think was, you need
A
much
slightly
larger.
larger lot. It's 100 feet as opposed to 75.
Yeah,
wide,
minimum of 100
Which-
feet, right?
Yeah,
Um,
which is not that onerous.
yeah, that's which is fair.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah, well, I mean, and this is, I think that's a fair point, you know, what your use is. And then, you know, we could make accommodations use specific too. I mean, there's a number of ways to go at it.
Yeah, I mean, the concern of the thought about rezoning a single parcel is, rezoning a single parcel to accommodate a pre-existing use or any use. What happens when the use goes away? Then all of a sudden you
Well,
have it.
Or wants to
have-
expand too,
it's-
so.
Yeah, or it expands, so then you have potentially, you know, a district that exists for a use that's not there anymore, and then the only thing that you can do in that district is that one specific use.
Can't ever be
Is
changed.
that a concern for Riverside too?
It's always a concern.
If they decide to leave, I mean, it's a concern for fabrication too, like if you.
Absolutely.
I mean, Ben, can it
With
be
any zone.
changed? For example, Rob goes, I go, can't the next owner come to the board and say, well, I bought this property, but I definitely don't wanna do what they did. And in that time, whether it's 10 years or 20 years or whatever, isn't that a possibility that they can come to the planning board and say, we need this rezoned for, let's just say, an apartment building or
Yeah,
a
well,
house?
so there's a process in the zoning code called zoning amendment.
Yep.
And it outlines the process you go through to do it. It's not the planning board that makes the decision, that's the town that votes on it.
Okay.
So any change to the map has to go to a special town meeting.
Okay.
Even the changes, any of these changes that we're talking about still has to go to town. meeting.
Sure.
It's a question about. I think, Michael, well, I mean, that's why I read the purpose and the intent was to, you know, when it was established. Are we trying to stay true to that, or are we trying to change it? It's a good question.
And to kind of follow that thinking is that the marine district, the purpose is to accommodate uses that are functionally water dependent. Except heavy manufacturing use, which. You know, you're dealing with boats, but it's clearly not water dependent where you're doing it. You're not doing it on the water. And I think, so that's.
We wouldn't be doing it without.
No, totally fair, and that's, I do appreciate that.
Right.
I think that's the, one of the things that a lot of marine districts around Maine, especially specifically in the shoreland, but I think it's relevant is what a lot of the districts try to do is pull out residential specifically to say, we want this to stay marine and kind of working waterfront. And whether that's specifically the intent or where this marine district came from, is to try and make sure that residential doesn't push out the working water.
Sure.
So I think that's probably at least part of the thinking with marine. With fabrication, residential is definitely part of it.
It's part of the mix.
And I mean, it's one of the, it's part of the purpose. And so I think that's where what you're doing is not like boats, marine, yes, they go together, but I also think that it might be that we can accommodate what you're doing, and probably should accommodate that kind, because I think we like more uses like that, similar uses to other uses that work with it, that also can work there. And it doesn't necessarily have to be marine. Marine, I think, maybe needs to lean more into the actual water access. And you could do your same business there, and fabrication is less water access and more a broad cross-section of things that we don't need. We don't need to protect fabrication district from, like, in the same way that we protect the working waterfront, because people are clamoring to get water views. They're not really clamoring to get into, live in the fabrication district. And look at the, you know what I mean? So I think that's
I think part of the solution is to look at what other uses are allowed in the district, in fabrication district, and see if, though, if it would be, if it's inappropriate, the standard that exists now is too limiting for those uses, potential uses. And if so, if there's more than one, it lends credence to the notion that the metric is not dialed in correct and it needs to be addressed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for example, if a lumberyard is permitted in the fabrication district, and lumberyards, Hancock or all of them, they have essentially these additional structures scattered throughout the lumberyard. And we don't have a lumberyard in the fabrication district, but if the use is allowed in the district, and there used to be, exactly, there used to be. But if that lumberyard, for example, was allowed in the district, would it be appropriate to allow additional structures of a larger size to support that use? Is that a compatible thing? And if the answer is yes, that lends credence to not only should we address the standard and maybe propose a change, but we look at the district wholesale instead of just making one change for one lot by putting it in a different district. That seems more like a knee-jerk reaction to me. And so I think it does require a more holistic sort of look at the district.
That's, yeah. So I guess what I would like to take away from this is just two questions for the board. Is one, are you generally open and sound to loosening the standards around additional structures in fabrication as one option?
I'd be interested in seeing a proposal.
Yeah.
Another, I'm just looking at in marine permitted building groups. So marine, there's large rural compound permitted. In fabrication, the permitted building group is a multi-unit court.
Yes.
Which is specifically a group of single unit residential units. It's so the purpose of the fabrication district isn't to have lots of residential units in it, but that's the only building group we allow is a group of residential units.
I believe that's to support one of those statements of purpose, right? To allow for number 3 in fabrication purpose.
That are compatible.
That are compatible with industrial activity.
Yeah,
So if
it's
it's
just-
like workforce housing or something like that.
Okay.
That's my guess.
Yeah, it just seems odd to me that, it seemed like multi-unit court, that's exactly what you're talking about. There are multiple units, each of which is sort of a structure that.
Yeah, but I think
For a
those are specifically.
But they are
dwelling.
But a multi-unit court is houses.
It is
a group
houses,
of
it's dwelling.
Right.
So I think it's.
That's,
If you're
just
open
saying
to
maybe
that,
that's.
I will work on going in that direction too. And then the flip side of that is exploring what does rezoning or some of the parcels there for marine? Or is everybody against that? I guess I'm happy to look into both, one, other, neither, you tell me.
It seems to me that you're gonna have musical zoning. Where everyone every 10 years wants to change their zone for something else. Why not make code more flexible for the people who want to have a business and not worry about that kind of stuff where I don't know, it just seems to me that you're creating more bureaucracy by flipping around in a district categorizations than just simply saying, okay, for this use, for this area, we're gonna polish it up so it makes it easier for the business owner to do their job, to run their business. I don't, yes.
I mean, I obviously I agree, but I think the third option that you mentioned, which was to have some sort of additional standards around like use dependent standards, might be an avenue worth exploring as well, because that's another way to introduce flexibility to a district without changing the underlying district itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'll just say like the rezoning of one, and then, you know, when a new business comes in rezone, it takes a while, you know, it's not quick. And so we're gonna have a conversation, and then we're gonna come back, and then we got to go to the select board, and then we got to go to town meeting. So it's like changing the zoning is
Same process we're going.
right. But I mean, like, so I'm saying like long term,
Right.
To keep doing that is harder than just saying like, look, we can fix this and make it,
Yeah.
you know, because we've got a good example. So
And not to, I mean, the select board makes the decisions about these things, so I'm not gonna speak for them, but the difference between like changing the map and changing, you know, 2 lines in a district, one is pretty small change. And, you know, they might be willing to suggest that that be handled at a special town meeting. A large change, like actually changing the map, like the color on the map, they may say, well, that should be held to the annual town meeting, so it's a whole year. You never know.
So
Yeah.
Just
I mean, I'm open to either. It just seems like it makes sense for it to be.
well, I understand it certainly makes sense from your perspective to change the district.
Well,
The question is whether it makes sense for the town.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
okay, so I know we're going long on time here.
Yeah, let's wrap this up.
So I have another issue also in the Marine District, or sorry, in the Fabrication District right now. There is a the business business that wants to come in that wants to build small boats, like flat pack. Think like IKEA, but of boats. And
IKEA boats.
Yeah,
CNC cut
twisty things.
kits.
Oh, but it would be like full boats. Like you'd be surprised actually. Like not maybe you wouldn't.
You get like a kit.
They're
Yeah,
kit
you
boats.
get
Okay.
CNC
They're
cut
nice.
boats.
Fully machine CNC cut, and then
Yeah.
you get.
Is this your business?
No.
Oh,
this
oh.
is- But it is a close friend.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think IKEA for boats maybe is doesn't give it the justice of how often.
Slightly demeaning.
Yeah.
Lightly.
So
Don't want to do that.
Particle board doesn't work.
These are highly precision
Yes.
milled boats.
right. Yes.
And it
Exactly.
comes with an Allen wrench. So-
And it comes with an Allen wrench.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. But
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
flat pack stuff. Okay, so the issue that that we're having is we're trying to figure out how to accommodate putting out a new lot from an existing lot. And originally, I guess one of the issues that we're running into, and actually I've kind of looked into it a bit, and I'm hoping that there might be some addition, like that you might have fresh eyes on this. The issue that we ran into is getting access to the site. It's not up against any roads except for Route 1 is along one side of it. And the
Far northern corner of the fabrication district.
yes, that north
Up
southern,
against your cemetery lot.
yeah,
It's
I know
bordered on
some.
two sides
Yes.
by the
Yeah.
cemetery.
Okay, behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I just want to, I guess, make sure that I understand this, because one of the issues that I thought we could get around was basically how are we going to create a right of way to a new parcel? And my understanding is the requirement is you have to have deeded access. The issue that we're running into is it says all newly created lots must abut a public or private road, which conforms with the Newcastle driveway road and entrance ordinance. If you recall, we recently changed the core zoning code to have the right of way reduced down to 24 feet wide. The roads, driveways, and entrance ordinance still requires 50-foot wide, right?
So you're proposing that we modify that to sync up?
To match, yeah. Because right now, I
Thank
think
you, folks.
Thank you.
I think the way that this is looking, the way that it's working, first of all, there's already a 20-foot right of way that comes to the property. So if you were to extend that 50 feet wide,
Eats up a lot of land.
Yeah, eats up a lot of land.
We don't actually physically have 50 feet
Right. Right. And so I'm not sure that.
from the building to.
Now, and the other thing that I'm not sure if it entirely makes sense is when you look at the fabrication district, the minimum lot width is 20 feet. So you could potentially have a right of way and then have two lots at the end of it. Or
Well, right of way isn't the road. You know, right of way is a right.
yeah. So let's understand. I want to, I guess, understand that a bit more, because is an easement the same as a right of way?
No.
The right of way, a type of easement.
But isn't a right of way, you have it in the deed, it is in there as a right of way.
Deeded
But
right
you
of way.
don't, but you don't own it. You
Correct.
were just deeded the right to use it.
A right of way is a type of easement. You can have other types of easement.
Right, you can have this easement that simply says you may service this
Right.
well that was drilled on the wrong side of the property line.
Or, you
But
know,
you can't drive back and
conservation
forth across
easements.
it, or conservation, or.
Other
Right of
types of-
way, you just have
right
the
of way.
right to use that.
Yeah.
No, as a matter of fact, I think
Right of
a technical definition of right of way is you have the right to pass over it.
Right.
You don't have the right to use it at all because it's not your land.
Right, well, pass over,
Yeah,
but you
yeah.
have the right to drive.
So it's basically it's an access easement is another word for right of way.
Mhm.
Now, the lot, the frontage width requirement, is that just measured anywhere on I guess, what's a private road? I would think a private road is basically just a right of way or an access easement.
No, it's a road. I mean, it's something you can drive on.
Well, wouldn't that be the right of way? Isn't that a right of way?
No, because you could have a right of way that's unbuilt.
Yeah, you can have a right of way through your neighbor's field.
Yeah.
But you have a right to walk through their field.
But it's not.
But if you had a deeded 24-foot wide right of way.
You can't front on it right of way. You have to front on a public or private road.
So I guess what makes a private road?
A private
When-
road?
When do you get
A
to
real
that?
road.
It has to be, yeah, it has to be built to the standards of a private road in the roads, driveways and entrances.
Yeah.
Built.
So it needs to be paved essentially.
No, it doesn't
Or
have to be
it could be
paved.
gravel, I guess.
Yeah, it can be gravel, absolutely. It just has to be built to those standards.
So it has to front on at least a gravel.
Yep.
But it can be a gravel road that we put in over a right of way.
Absolutely. That's how you do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it needs to be or gravel, meet the standards of the physical standards requirements of private road, and has to have deeded access, deeded, right?
Well, now that second part is option. It depends on the configuration of the lot in question. The primary lot and the new lot.
So
when it comes to cutting a lot off of another lot.
Yeah.
All it says is it must front on a public or private road. That's all it says.
Okay.
So a right of way doesn't count. It has to be a physical road.
Right.
Whether or not someone grants someone else a right of way on that, go for it. That's fine. Not up to us.
So you could have a lot that fronts onto private road.
Yes,
That you're not allowed to use.
correct.
Don't use.
That you don't have a right of way.
And you don't
Yes.
have to have frontage on.
And that happens more often than you would think. Absolutely.
That would be really unfortunate.
It would be really unfortunate, but hey,
Unless you have a helicopter.
families argue sometimes.
Yeah.
So, and the minimum right of way width is 50 feet.
In the roads, driveways and entrances ordinance.
That sounds like that's, I don't know if that's the problem, but that's a thing.
Well, now,
That's the right of way.
The right of way
Doesn't
have
mean
to
the
be
road is
built,
50 feet.
Correct,
It just
absolutely.
means there has to be a 50-foot right of way
Correct.
But a lot has to.
front on a road.
Yeah,
But the right of way does not dictate the boundary of the lot. In other words, Sheepsgate Road is a perfect example. For most of Sheepsgate Road, the center line of Sheepsgate Road is where the properties on either side actually meet under the pavement. Right in the center. They own right to the center of the road. That's not owned by anybody except the property owners all the way down Sheepsgate Road.
right.
You pay taxes on it if you own them. Those properties come with a right of way for the town to create and maintain a public road.
So.
You pay taxes on it, but you can't do anything.
You can't do
with it,
anything to it. That's right.
As opposed to East Old County Road where the property line is along the side. Many roads.
Right,
The
yeah.
property line is not
Is
the
one
middle of
side
the
of it,
road, it's one side.
And so if you want, so you could create a lot that goes to the center of a private road.
Or one side or the other.
As long as that road's built,
As long as the road's built
It meets your property.
and it touches your property. In front. So you can create a new lot, but it's got to be built. It can't be a non-existent right of way in the forest.
okay,
So
I
as
guess,
soon as I put a road into a spot in my property, I can sell that lot.
As long as it meets the dimensional requirements of the district and the road driveways and entrances ordinance and all other applicable standards, maybe.
Fair enough.
So-
So the 50-foot right of way. Which is in the driveways and whatever act. I have a 25-foot right of way from Hall Street to my property.
What is that?
Across like where Newcastle Center is, Hall Street.
Okay, you have a 25
Sorry,
foot
from Academy Hill Road. I have a 25-foot wide
right of way.
to get out to Academy Hill.
And
Road.
what's on that right of way?
Is it a road?
It's a road.
Paved,
Oh, it's a paved
Yeah.
road. Okay.
It's paved.
Partly, it's, yeah,
Pavement.
Loosely paved.
Yeah, very loosely,
Got it.
and then gravel.
But it's
So-
a drive. It's
Yeah,
it's a public way.
Well, it's private,
It's a private way.
yeah. But can I just continue that 25-foot right of way to put my road up to the back of my lot? Or do I have to have a 50-foot right of way, which seems a little silly if I can only have a 25-foot right of way to get to my lot?
So the 25 foot right of way that exists now was probably put in place prior to the adoption of these codes we're talking about. So many years ago.
Yeah.
So it would be considered a pre-existing non-conforming condition. So all I can say is that it has to meet the requirements of the code.
Which is.
There's a
Today.
suggestion from today, but there's a suggestion from the planner that we look at that 50-foot right of way requirement in the road driveways and entrances ordinance. And potentially propose that it mirror what exists in the core zoning code, which is 24 feet. Which would have to be done as a amendment to the core zoning code. It would have to go through public hearing and it would have to be voted on at town meeting.
to reduce it down to, reduce the 50-foot right of way down to 20.
That's the amendment to the core zoning code or to the roads driveways?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
entrances?
Roads, right, yeah. So. Can you build a road? Anywhere you want? Like just down your property?
With the appropriate permit, yes. Maybe.
Right, yeah. So. So your property. Like if you just put a road on your property, you could have a lot that fronts onto that road.
That's how it works.
What's that?
That's how it works.
That's how we rode. Get to, so if you have a narrow long lot, you could get a house behind you. You have. can't put it on
building,
a
right.
road.
So if I had 10 acres, right? Someone was
A
like,
square 10 acres?
yeah, square 10 acres.
Yes.
And someone was like, I want that acre right in the middle. And I was like, yeah, sure, okay, I'm gonna cut you an acre, whatever the minimum lot size is, great. I could just build a road through my property. As long as that,
Subdivide.
You'd have to subdivide it. It could be,
subdivide.
well, not subdivide, not subdivision rules.
Right.
But you'd have, yes,
I could sell that 1 acre in the middle.
if it fronted on a public or private road.
Would that property need a deeded right away?
I think.
Because it's building the road, it may not have permission to use it.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Well, would you buy it without one?
I mean,
Right,
that's the due diligence of the people doing the property transfer,
So
right?
that's what I understand. So as
Well,
long as there's a road. That like goes across my property, my road, no one else's, there's no easement there, just my road and a property in the middle of the. That 1 square acre in the middle of my 10 square acres, I could sell
As long
it.
as.
Probably, this is me.
Maybe, probably, but it would like, okay, so we only have certain types of lots, so it couldn't be a flag lot, it can't be an insular lot.
Is that an insular lot? Seems like it would be an insular.
If it fronts on a public or private road, no.
Okay.
But the road has to have a 50-foot right of way
At the moment.
at the moment, unless we change that.
Okay.
But it has to have a
that's
right of
okay.
way. I mean, we're not gonna change it to no right. of way. I would think.
Yeah.
I would assume there'd have to be.
We gotta
That's-
wrap this up, guys.
That's what it sounds like.
I got-
There is no right of way. That's what I guess what I don't understand is. That road that's on my property, does it have a right of way?
It does not
You
have,
have to give it to them.
it doesn't have to have. a-
Nobody would want the property unless you need.
Right,
it.
well, that's.
Well, yeah, but the question, sorry, my question is. The road that I just put in is 15 feet wide. I have to give them 50 feet wide of right of way to use the road? Or can I just give them deeded access to use the road? They can use the 15 feet of road.
Question for Peter.
Which one is Peter?
Is the
Attorney.
Okay, alright.
Let's kick it. It's in the interest of time, we've been here 2 hours and 45 minutes, so. We can't actually even answer the question, so.
Right.
I think we should ask
I
the
think
town
it's fun
planner to
putting it in front
consult.
of you guys so you can think about it.
It's a good question. It's a great question. But I think we gotta move on.
Okay.
So
I have a question about special exceptions in the shoreline zone, but
we can go for that next time.
yeah, it's not that. Shouldn't be that long, but
9:15. Should I consider everything you just brought up your planner's report? Are there any public comments for items not on the agenda? The public.
Crickets.
Okay. If you're okay
yeah.
and without objection, meeting adjourned. 8:44. Thank you all.
Thank you.
No, great questions tonight, always.